Why? What else do I have to do?
So I've been playing a lot of video games and watching a lot of movies during this quarantine, so the combo has been stuck in my head recently. So let's just get right into it. Some clarification first. I will only be doing live-action, theatrically released movies that are American productions, because that's what people are really talking about when they talk about these kind of movies. There are just way too many direct-to-DVD, animated, and Japanese movies to cover.
Doing this subsection alone is already a lot, so I'm going to limit myself to this. I will be going in order of release to see the evolution of this very divisive genre. Alright, what's up first? So it's 1993, video games are not going away, so now it's time to capitalize on their fan base by adapting it into another medium.
So it makes sense to tackle the most popular video game character, maybe of all time. I've played tons of Mario games, and they were all great. They were super colorful with simple but fun mechanics. The main difficulty with adapting these is that all of them are kinda light on plot, so the movie needs to do a lot of heavy lifting to be watchable. This movie had a lot of talent behind it. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo were known, and the film had a decent budget. Even with all these elements, apparently the movie had a rough production schedule. The directors felt Mario had been around so long that they wanted to focus on making the movie for adults with a dark aesthetic. They got so far with this idea that whole sets and props were completed. This all fell apart when studio execs showed up during construction and were shocked. This led to a lot of clashing with the studio, now forced to work with all this dark gothic production design while trying to focus the film to be more family friendly, because Mario games are for children. The script was being rewritten on set. Actors were getting frustrated, and the director was having clashes with the studio. This all led to a movie so infamously bad that there wasn't another Hollywood film based on a Nintendo property for 26 years. The movie starts nice, playing the classic music. This then leads into some voiceover narration done by Mario, which is...
Actually, no people went around hassling them because there weren't any people yet. Just the first tiny mammals. Basically, life was good.
It just don't get no better than this.
Yeah. A giant meteorite struck the Earth. Goodbye, dinosaurs. What if the dinosaurs weren't all destroyed? What if the impact of that meteorite created a parallel dimension where the dinosaurs continue to thrive and evolve into intelligent, vicious, aggressive beings?
This kind of goes into the issue of adapting the game as mythology, because it doesn't really have any.
All these creatures just kind of exist. A princess is captured by a giant turtle dragon, and Mario needs to save her. Mario is a plumber to explain his outfit and why he goes down pipes. This doesn't give them a lot to work with, so the filmmakers needed to make some creative liberties. The main story is pretty basic. Mario and his brother Luigi are struggling plumbers who meet a scientist named Daisy, who is kidnapped by King Koopa. They follow her into an alternate world referred to as Mushroom Kingdom, or Dino Hatton, a world filled with people evolved from dinosaurs.
Look, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. This movie isn't bad. People really like to sell this as one of the worst movies ever made, but there's so much to appreciate as a movie. First off, the production design, with the sets in particular, are just incredible. They feel so alive due to the great amount of detail and care that was put into them. The special effects overall have aged pretty well. There's some really quality stuff if you care for it. I think the directors, despite the studio forcing them to change their vision, still handled the tone very well. The movie feels like a fun little sci-fi adventure. They said they were trying to shoot for the tone of Ghostbusters, and while this movie is not as fun or smart as Ghostbusters is, it still got that playful tone down. Now, I feel like I should comment on one of the most criticized scenes from this movie.
Name? Mario. Last name? Mario.
Look, the Mario joke is funny.
Okay, look, how many Marios are there between the two of you?
There's three. There's Mario and Luigi Mario.
They are poking fun at the game's title, and it is a quick joke that has no effect on anything, so calm down, nerds. The movie also works because all the leads give real, genuine effort. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo have a great dynamic and know what movie they are in.
Aliens? Oh, we gotta deal with aliens too?
Luigi, we're the aliens!
Yeah? Whoa, cool!
There is one performance I would identify as terrible, and that is Dennis Hopper.
Do you know what I love about mud? It's clean and it's dirty at the same time.
I don't care that he looks like a person. His performance is really bad. It feels like he doesn't want to be there and thinks this is a stupid kid's movie.
And you've at least suspected that you were different.
I mean, it is, but cover it up better at least.
Take these two plumbers to the Devo chamber.
People really hate this one because it changes a lot from the games, but it needs to be understood this is live action, so it needs a certain logic the games don't have. Would have I liked a more colorful world like the games? Sure, but the movie made its own choices and most of it works. There are good jokes and bad jokes, but it is definitely watchable. Not an accurate adaptation of the games, but fun enough. At least we can all agree that this will be better than whatever Illumination churns out in the next 2 years, where Mario will probably do whatever TikTok dance is popular at the time.
Yeah.
That wasn't so bad. What's next? Okay, that was tough. So, Double Dragon, like Mario, is a very simple game. It's about two brothers, a girl they like is captured, they have to fight some crazy gang to get her back. I will be honest in saying that my enjoyment might have been affected by watching Mario right before this, but this movie stinks.
I'm gonna barf!
We open up with expository narration again, except with much less visual effort.
Thousands of years ago, in ancient China, an evil army of shadow warriors terrorized the great city of Changsha. The good king sacrificed himself to create a mystical medallion.
In the games, it is called Double Dragon because it has two characters and it sounds cool. In this, it's some magical medallion. Despite having this mystical setup, this movie is set in the future of 2007. The villain is just some rich guy who wants to use the medallion to rule the city.
I just want total domination of one major American city! Is that too much to ask for? Is it? Is it?
One half of it lets you do this. This movie has terrible effects, and they use it a lot.
Destiny has brought together the double dragons.
So, the brothers, yes, they are supposed to be brothers, have the other half. These guys fight other gangs, but the fight scenes are terrible.
Special delivery!
Even without the fights, the in-between stuff is not enjoyable at all. Every actor is on a different page, so there's no cohesion between performances. The main brothers have no personality, so they are not fun to watch, and they just argue a lot.
You could at least act like you care. Get over it!
Stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Does not help that none of the jokes make any sense.
With a head case.
That joke would make sense if he knocked him out with the case, but he didn't. This places the movie in the unfun kind of camp, sadly. So, definitely worse than Mario.
Eat some fish, buttheads! Billy, no!
So apparently this movie had tons of involvement from Capcom, the game's publisher, which is shocking because there's very little street fighting in this movie. It is more of a war film.
After 7 months of fighting, the civil war in Shadaloo may have reached the turning point. The capital has just fallen.
It deals with an evil dictator who is demanding ransom for some political hostages. The games have a very light tournament narrative, just an excuse for a very diverse group of fighters to battle. While this movie has tons of characters from the games, they aren't really accurate. For example, the two franchise faces, Ryu and Ken, are top-tier martial artists in the games, but here they're just con men who sell phony weapons. That kind of logic is applied to all the characters, where they are just kind of twisted to fit the narrative of the story. But all of them fit really well into the story. They all have a purpose.
Quick! Change the channel!
But there's one bit of casting in this movie that elevates its entertainment value significantly, and that is Jean-Claude Van Damme as Guile.
Colonel Guile, Chun-Li and GNT News. May we speak to you, sir, please?
No.
At the time, Jean-Claude was a pretty big get, and he is so entertaining to watch.
You're all under arrest.
He just brings the right machismo that fits so well in this goofy world.
You have made me a happy man.
Next, I'll make you a dead one.
If they had gotten a real actor, they would have tried to make these speeches have, like, gravitas, but Jean says them with such a straight face, he makes these scenes the best in the movie.
Well, I'm not going home. I'm gonna get on my boat, and I'm going upriver, and I'm going to kick that son of a bitch Bison's ass so hard that the next Bison wannabe is gonna feel it.
This movie is my kind of cheese. Despite not a lot of actual fighting, I was always entertained, especially by Van Damme.
Colonel, have you lost your mind?
No, you've lost your balls.
A lot of elements are frustrating because they were this close to putting together a fun movie and a Street Fighter movie. But we got one. By the way, this is how the movie actually ends. Amazing. We got another fighting game movie, but this one is a little special. Mortal Kombat was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, who is one of the most prolific video game movie directors. I am a big fan of the games. Lots of cool characters with tons of goofy, over-the-top violence. When this movie came out, the games were light on story, but instead of making up some weird framing device, instead the movie is just... it's a lot of fights.
We got company.
They give the most basic setup so the tournament doesn't come out of nowhere, but once it starts going, it just goes. There are 4 fight scenes in a row that just kind of start one after the other with no setup. And the fights are pretty alright, despite the tons of unnecessary slow-mo. I would say overall all the effects have aged poorly. But the animatronic for the monster fighter Goro is pretty great. Also, the music slaps. Apparently the soundtrack was the first EDM record to go platinum. Just a cool fact. The movie's biggest strength is the casting. Everyone fits their parts and gives very fun performances. The only one that is slightly off is Christopher Lambert as Raiden, who, other than not being Japanese, sounds like he smokes a pack of cigarettes a day.
You have embarked on a sacred mission. You have been chosen to defend the realm of Earth in a tournament called Mortal Kombat.
This movie accomplishes what it wants, despite looking slightly like a TV film.
Your brother's soul is mine.
Despite no over-the-top violence the series is known for, it's a pretty good movie for fans.
We pathetic fools, I've come for your souls.
I don't think so.
Ah, cool, the sequel's next. That's convenient.
I am at a loss for words.
Without Raiden, it's hopeless.
Never give up hope.
This movie came out only 2 years after the first one, had almost double the budget, and somehow is worse in every aspect.
Brother, you're alive. Too bad you will die.
I feel bad for saying the first does very basic setup, because this movie doesn't bother with any of that. It is just fight scene after fight scene, trying to cram as many characters from the games as possible.
Pretty cool, huh? It's my animality.
Good luck recognizing any characters from the first movie, because everyone was recast except these two. Some just show up for their fight, then just die. Some are beaten off screen. There is no narrative weight to anything, just a stampede of bad effects, fights, and performances moving at a turbo pace. It is truly terrible, but also kind of the best one so far. I am conflicted because I know this movie is bad, but holy shit, is this not one of the most entertaining movies I have ever seen. Every creative decision is wrong and insane.
The fate of the universe will be decided as it should be.
Immortal Kombat.
If you are into bad movie watching, this movie will become a new favorite. I honestly can't rank this one. It feels wrong to place this anywhere. Maybe I'll rank this one later. I need to think about it. I've never played these games or heard of this movie before I decided to do this video, so not a lot of knowledge on this one going in. From what I can tell, it's like a spaceship flight simulator where you battle some cat aliens. They must have been somewhat popular, I guess, because get this, the director of the movie, Chris Roberts, is the creator of the games. This is most likely going to be the only time this happens. What I'm saying here is the main creative force behind this movie knows this series inside and out, but this is his first movie and it really shows. You can tell there's a lot of thought put into the world, but it just isn't very interesting when the main conflict is just these aliens bad and humans good. The dialogue is so technical and sterile, it makes the whole experience feel empty. Characters have one trait at best, but no time is spent really building stakes or developing them. While there are some cool production design elements, it all feels like a mishmash of better sci-fi action movies. It mainly reminded me of Starship Troopers, except without the satirical edge. Not terrible, just boring. If we should appreciate Wing Commander for any reason, it's for giving stars Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard the chance to work on their chemistry before perfecting it in cinematic masterpiece Scooby-Doo.
Now change the subject quickly, pal, before I change it for you.
Oh, you got a problem with my friend, Mr. Hunter?
Yes, I do.
Good, that means you got a problem with me.
Is that so?
Yeah.
So far, this isn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. I will be fair in saying that I do have a soft spot for this era of cheesy movies, so it definitely lessens the blow of their quality for me. Other than Wing Commander, these movies reminded me of the first live-action Ninja Turtles movie. The humor, the sets, the effects, all were trying to capture that same tone. It makes sense when you're trying something new. You find safety in copying a blueprint of something that worked before. By following this blueprint, most of these movies were fun to watch at least. The main struggle of these movies is trying to balance the feel of the game with having an actual story. But now, as we enter the 2000s, we need to adjust to the tropes of the decade, because things get a little extreme.
So these games were pretty subversive for their time by starring a woman in the lead. The games focus on Lara Croft, a badass archaeologist who travels around to various locations trying to find treasure, and fighting off groups who want to use it for evil means. Not only was the film adaptation one of the first female-led action movies, it was also one of Angelina Jolie's first big Hollywood roles. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, let's talk about the bad things. Lara Croft has always been controversial for being over-sexualized, especially for the size of her chest. Fans were actually annoyed that Angelina Jolie's breasts were not big enough for the character, that they made her wear a padded bra. Just goes to show that even when there's progress in this industry, it still manages to suck. The director has done some interviews claiming how ahead of its time the movie was, but he still included really unnecessary shower scenes. How did they decide to start their fun treasure hunting adventure? She fights a robot. I still don't understand this. Maybe they wanted to include a robot because of the Matrix or something. This thing is just filled with 2000s tropes. Motivated by dead parent, hacker sidekick, extreme sports, the techno music. And the Illuminati being the villain group.
My father was not with the Illuminati, he would have told me.
That idea has become so warped over the years, it is hysterical to hear them take it so seriously. The jokes are also really bad.
Your bum's gone to sleep again. All down the left cheek.
Really? It's fascinating.
Despite all this, the movie's pretty average. Everyone is doing what they need to do, and overall it is a pretty accurate representation of the games. Some of the action set pieces are really well done and actually feature puzzle solving you could imagine seeing in the games. This one so far is the video game movie I would call the most competent. So yeah, overall, enjoyable. So this is the first Resident Evil movie directed by Mortal Kombat director Paul W.S. Anderson. I have played a few of these games and really enjoy them. They are about puzzle solving, item management, and zombie fighting. This movie is the start to the most successful video game movie series. This is the only video game adaptation that became a franchise. I have seen them all before, but I've not seen them in a while. I think there is a general consensus that this is the best one. I disagree. The big problem with this movie is that it's really boring. Everything kind of just drags. Resident Evil opens with the zombie virus outbreak happening in a lab where the story is set, but goes out of its way to develop these characters who never show up in the rest of the movie. Why do we care if these aren't the people we will be following? This opening should be 2 minutes tops. Someone drops zombie vial, someone becomes zombie, zombie attacks person, cut to main characters. Why waste time on things like this elevator sequence? The movie eventually follows a team sent in to deal with the situation along with series protagonist Alice, who has amnesia. I think she is really symbolic of the core problem with this movie is that the characters are not developed at all. It is just straight plot, with the only mystery being who is Alice, which we don't really get an answer to because there's 5 more movies. A lot of the movie hinders on you being attached to these characters, so if you aren't, it is really boring.
No! We're not leaving you, Kaplan!
Yes, you are!
No!
No one is really interesting. It would maybe win some pity points if these were game characters, but there aren't any game characters in this movie. Apparently this was supposed to be set in the game universe as a prequel, but decided against it, but they just kept all the original elements instead of adding things from the game. And when there is stuff from the game, it's really bad. The poorly aged CG doesn't help either.
Oh my god.
I have a lot more to say about this series, but there's 5 more to talk about, so I'm just gonna move on. This movie is not good.
Hello?
If it wasn't obvious already, I like cheesy action movies, but this was too far for me. I didn't think the first film was super serious or anything, but this movie goes to a whole different level. This had a different director from the first, and they just went so over the top. First film had moments, but this was like the whole thing. It just got boring to watch. Another disappointing thing about the sequel is it completely loses the feel of adventure the first had. I don't think it's unfair to compare Lara Croft to Indiana Jones, but this movie was trying to make her feel more like James Bond.
Okay, where are you coming from now?
Keep going straight. Keep your speed steady.
Lara, welcome back!
There truly isn't a lot to say about this one. It wasn't terrible, but I'm going to forget about this one pretty quickly. Okay, so this is the first movie directed by Uwe Boll, who is a pretty infamous video game movie filmmaker. He has 5 more movies on this list. His films mostly bomb and are critically ripped to shreds. Boll has a very aggressive personality to the point where he challenged movie critics to fight him in a boxing match. The games these are based on, I've played a handful of them because they always have a booth in an arcade. It is a 2-player shooter that goes through like a mansion or castle run by some evil scientist who has created a bunch of undead monsters that you have to shoot through. This movie as an adaptation is not terrible, I guess. They got the undead monsters and the evil scientist, but this is genuinely one of the most incompetent films I have ever seen. Every decision made is so wrong, I can barely comprehend it. The structure, the editing, the dialogue, the makeup is all so awful, you probably aren't going to believe some of the things I am going to say. It is immediately wrong from the beginning, where we start with narration and this character.
It was a nightmare. So many dead people. So many victims. It all started a few days ago when I came here for a rave. And now all that remains is the rotten smell of death.
We then flash back to a completely different set of characters, and this guy doesn't join the group for 30 minutes. When he does, it has no sense of importance, making you wonder why the movie started like that at all. We also have to be stuck with these characters for a while, with the guys being so obnoxious and the women being there for no other reason than to show off their bodies at some point. They go to an island for a rave, but everyone was killed by zombies. The zombie makeup is so terrible that some of it looks to be about on the same level as stuff you can buy from Party City. The flatly shot and lit camera work does not make it look any better. The only interesting bit of camera work is like this 360 spin around shot, but he uses it so much. For some reason, when certain characters die, it will cut to a weird pose and spin around them as the screen fades to red. This is probably the best time to talk about the editing. This has some of the worst transitions I have seen in a theatrical film, from wipes to blood dripping on the screen. At random moments, they will cut to the evil scientist staring from behind a tree. He doesn't even interact with the characters till the last 10 minutes, so those shots don't add anything story or tension-wise. So the thing that makes this movie stand out as a video game movie is that it features footage from the games that is just like intercut in scenes at random. It just pops in and out whenever it feels like it. So you may be asking, is this movie at least fun bad? Well, after watching it, there's only one scene I could say is truly enjoyable. The survivors need to get into a house and have to fight through tons of zombies. They are not too far away from the house, but this scene feels like 10 minutes. They give every character like a badass moment with the 360 camera spin, and it just goes on and gets stupider and stupider. I was crying from laughing so hard. But it was the kind of laughing where you just feel broken, the kind where you don't even know what you are laughing at. So if it wasn't obvious, this is the worst movie so far. If it didn't have the shootout, I would probably forget about it. This is gonna be a hard one to beat.
MacGyvers.
Now we are back to Resident Evil with Apocalypse. None of these subtitles truly mean anything, but I will at least mention them. From what I can tell, people say this is the worst one, but as usual, I disagree. It is silly, but at least it understands that.
Shit! Maybe I was safer outside.
I definitely liked it more than the last one. Let's use Apocalypse to discuss the idea of adaptation. Resident Evil is a survival horror game, so are these movies scary? Absolutely not. This tends to be the main criticism from fans, but there is an aspect of the series the films capture very well. They are really over the top and silly.
Albert Wesker. Resident Evil.
Intentional or not, the series captures the corniness of the games pretty well. Is this a good movie? No. Does it feel closest to the games? I would argue yes. It actually features characters from Resident Evil 3 and takes place in the game's most iconic setting, Raccoon City. The group Alice teams up with feels most unique and were characters that actually had a fun dynamic at times. I can say I was never bored during this one, and for this series, that's a huge compliment. God damn it, there's 4 more of these. I'm moving on.
Motherfucker, please, look. My shit is custom.
This is the second Uwe Boll movie, and it is another movie with zombies and demons. I don't know why these are the games producers gravitate towards, but whatever. I have never played an Alone in the Dark game, but I know they are about atmospheric horror. A lot of things are in shadow and is more about avoiding threats than fighting them. Due to the moody nature of this series, Boll decided to take a step back and focus more on the presentation than action. Just kidding, it is another action movie. Unlike the last one, Uwe got some semi-known stars. Christian Slater, Tara Reid, and Steven Dorff were not no-names, but this movie definitely damaged their careers because they all turned in their worst performances. In their defense, the script doesn't give them a lot to work with. The story is so poorly told that they needed to insert narration all over to explain key plot points.
The man who attacked me yesterday was after the Abkhani artifact I found in Chile. He was driven by the same force that controls the creatures.
This whole movie was just so lame.
I'm gonna need a lot of these.
I barely remember anything about it. There were demons, and the main character was psychic, and Tara Reid was a curator or something. It was just a dull experience with nothing really of note. At least House of the Dead had the shootout scene. This has nothing, because it is nothing.
My guys are dying out there for nothing. For fucking nothing! God damn it!
I've not played the old Doom games, but I do highly recommend the 2016 reboot, which, as far as I know, is pretty accurate to what all the games are like. The game's main lore is a portal between Earth and Mars is discovered, but turns out that portal goes through hell. You play some highly trained soldier who has to fight a demon outbreak in a Mars outpost. The games are fast and fun, and pretty focused on just killing. So, the 2005 movie got half of it right. The movie is mostly set on Mars, and it features soldiers fighting off monsters. I am fine with changes like making it a group instead of one guy. Makes sense from a story perspective if they took advantage of it. The characters are just there to add to the body count. They also got rid of the hell element, making the creatures mutated from some sort of Mars virus. While the demon element would be cool to see, I really don't care. Though you don't get to see the iconic monsters from the games, you still get an outbreak of strange creatures. Maybe they wanted to simplify it or thought it was too ridiculous. When I judge these as adaptations, I care more if the movie captures the feel or the general idea of the game, which this movie doesn't do at all. The goofiness of the games are lost, resulting in a much drier experience. It isn't helped by the thin story, which has characters just searching. It takes a while for the monsters to be discovered, and that causes huge drags in the movie. From a quality perspective, despite its cast and decent budget, it feels like an Uwe Boll film. So cheap feeling with only the loosest ties to the property it is based on. There are some interesting ideas and some camp towards the end, but overall it is a pretty dull experience. Before I move on, I need to say one more thing. There is a sequence in this movie that fans remember where it is all POV like the games. This sequence is not good. It feels so out of place and lazily filmed. It is some of the most baseline fan service I have seen in a movie like this. If the movie had tried harder to earn this moment, I'd be more forgiving, but it didn't.
Semper Fi, motherfucker!
Moving on to God damn it. Another Uwe Boll movie and another gothic action movie set at night. At least this time, he's adapting an action game. It is about a half-vampire who needs to fight her evil vampire father. This movie is riddled with all the same problems. Bad effects, bad acting, bad story. The structure of this one is so off. Our main character, Rain, is introduced like this.
The beautiful Rain! A creature so sensitive to water!
No grandeur or mystique, she is just dragged into frame. She's being kept as a roadside attraction, and we establish she wants to escape. The next time we see her, she has already escaped and is covered in blood. The explanation for this is all told through flashbacks scattered across the next 10 minutes. Absolutely none of this information needed to be hidden, so why hide it in the flashbacks? This whole movie just feels like it was written while they were shooting. The main character's goal changes constantly, giving it this really drawn out, stop then go approach. The sound effects were also noticeable in this one. I felt like I was watching children play fighting in a street. It doesn't help that the movie looks so flat and lifeless like a TV movie. It makes all the sets and costumes look so cheap. I think this is Boll's most competent movie, but still lacked any so bad it's good funny moments. I did like this part. That is a great face. Good take, Boll. Like the 90s, the first half of the 2000s is riddled with tropes. They are all very edgy. Interestingly, most of these movies were about zombies or demons shot in very dark locations. Tons of rock music and techno. I think a big issue is these movies are kind of losing their playful tone. Because of how they are presented, it makes the movie so much more boring. The 90s felt more like experiments, like they were trying to make money on an established IP, but it had a lot of ideas. The first half of the 2000s feel more like studios wanted to make edgy action movies, but grabbed cheap video game rights to sell it. The movies have become less interested in actually representing the game, instead choosing what they think will sell. They just copy things that worked at the time instead of trying anything new. We are now halfway through. The rest of this list includes, but is not limited to, 3 more Uwe Boll movies and 4 more Resident Evil movies. This movie was directed by Christopher Gans. He is actually a huge fan of the games that this movie is based on, and it shows. The Silent Hill games are about psychological and atmospheric horror. Each game is about a character who needs to rescue someone or solve a mystery in the town of Silent Hill. The town becomes covered in a fog that transports people into another world where monsters manifested from people's minds become reality. This description also works for the movie, which makes this the best in an adaptation sense. This movie is also shot great. It kind of blows all the other previous movies out of the water.
It was the first time during any of these movies I felt like I was watching an honest attempt at a film.
The camera helps build a tense atmosphere while also feeling refreshingly scary. A lot of these horror video game movies try to be scary by just adding a loud sound, while this one just unnerves you with its imagery. They use very cool techniques to bring the game's monsters to life, giving you the same feeling you get from encountering them in the game. I'm glad they didn't put awful sound effects, because the music is fantastic. The director opted just to use the music from the games to score the movie,
because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That being said, the movie isn't perfect.
Clocking in at a little over 2 hours, the movie feels long.
There's this side plot with some male characters that was forced in there because producers wanted more men in the movie, and it really drags the pacing.
Ça a été de... Au départ, mon idée a été de faire de Silent Hill, c'était un peu mon analyse de l'univers de Silent Hill, d'en faire un matriarcat. Et en fait, le seul compromis que j'ai eu à faire pour Sony TriStar, ça a été d'introduire plus fortement le personnage du père.
A lot of the acting is really stiff, and the CGI has not aged the best. Despite all this, it was so refreshing to watch something that felt like a lot of genuine effort was put in to respect the games and still focus on making a film.
I feel there's not going to be a lot like this.
I'm so impressed with you, honey. Meow, 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 meow.
So we have another fighting game movie, and this one gives me a lot of conflicted feelings.
The Dead or Alive games are very over-the-top fighting games. Every fighting game has an element that makes it stand out, and the Dead or Alive games are infamous for one specific aspect. The women in these games are so sexualized that there's a spin-off series that is just about them chilling on an island in bikinis playing volleyball.
What I'm trying to really get at is that this movie's really horny.
It is almost shot like a beer commercial. All the women's bodies are framed so sexually, it is ridiculous. I guess it is accurate to the games, but it gets mad uncomfortable. They put more effort into this than any other part of the movie.
And how do our contestants look?
We got a strong group, sir. They look really good.
Silent Hill was refreshing, but now we are back to the cheap, flat look. Everything about this seems cheap. They try their best to recreate the game's costumes, but they look so bad. The sound design doesn't help either. They used the corniest sound effects they could find. The acting is pretty rough in this one. Everyone's delivery is so stiff and bland.
Before I take your life, will you repent for leaving the clan?
My only goal is to find out what happened to my brother.
Eric Roberts plays the villain, and it is so funny to watch him fight. The movie has a passing understanding of how goofy it is and just rolls with it. They try their best at jokes, even if it doesn't really land.
Hey, this thing kind of reminds me of a disco.
It is ridiculous how bad some of the green screen is, and the plot just kind of stops and goes whenever it feels like. Scenes never really feel like they naturally start or end, and they waste their time on such nonsense. There is a whole sequence where the main three need to get to a building before sundown and need to climb a tower that could be cut out. There is a whole volleyball sequence that they justify as a distraction, but really it is just to see them in bathing suits. For a fight movie, some of the action is really good with a lot of wire work. I could always tell what was happening even if it was completely ridiculous. I laughed a lot and had mostly a good time. Not a good movie, but at least it was entertaining. I despise this movie. This is everything bad about this series and more in one package. This is when the editing just gets obnoxious and the characters are so annoying in this one. It is set in a desert for some reason, maybe this director liked Mad Max or something. The last movie had the benefit of being set at night, but now you can see all the awful CGI in all its glory. This movie is so aimless with what it is trying to do. Like they give Alice psychic powers that do not matter at all. I'm sorry for not going deep into this one, but there just isn't much to say. There's not a shred of fun in this entire experience, ironic or intentional. I can say I was at least amused by how bad some of these movies were. This... I got nothing.
You bitch. You dropped my baby.
This one's gonna be tough to beat. It was beaten, and of course, it was Uwe Boll. Resident Evil Extinction was a worthless experience, and while I do hate those deeply, the worst kind of movie to me is the one that is doing nothing but trying to piss you off. I don't care if it is competently shot or has decent elements. These kinds of movies will always be the biggest pieces of garbage to me. This is why I hate Passengers or Crash. And this is why I hate Postal. For quick clarification context, the Postal games are known for their crude tones and horrific violence. It is insane that out of all the huge video games that exist, Postal gets a movie, and worse, it is this movie. A game with an offensive tone directed by a guy who doesn't give a fuck.
Boll, I'm Vince Stezzi. What the fuck you do to my game Postal?
I don't know what your fucking problem is. The movie is great.
Oh shit!
Watching this made me sick to my stomach during certain scenes. Some I won't show. This film features Osama bin Laden and George Bush being friends. A supposedly hysterical recreation of 9/11. Cops carelessly murdering civilians. Vern Troyer being sexually assaulted by 1,000 monkeys. A whole sequence where our main characters are all dressed as Hitler. A group of women who are just there to be sexualized. And a shootout where multiple children are shot and killed in the crossfire. This is all played for laughs, because these are the things Uwe Boll thinks are funny. Even if all that stuff doesn't turn you off, the movie is just such a bore to watch. The punchline for 90% of the jokes is just violence. Haha, someone died, just over and over again. The script feels like it was by a 14-year-old on Reddit, and it is even marketed to them. Almost all the promo material claimed this movie was a live-action South Park. Like it or not, there's one key difference when it comes to South Park. The show is always trying to make a point about something in the world or culture because it is satire. It does use violence and gross-out humor as jokes, but it is trying to make a point with it. Satire can be a double-edged sword sometimes, because the points South Park is trying to make are covered up by people who just like the edgy humor. Postal is nothing but edgy humor. There are times it feels like Boll is trying to make a point, but it's aimed at America, a culture he did not grow up in. It causes this huge disconnect because it feels like nothing is set in any sort of reality. All this movie is trying to do is shock you with not really any commentary to it. I'm okay with being uncomfortable. A good example of a satire similar to this one is the movie Four Lions, which is a buddy comedy about wannabe suicide bombers. That idea could go really bad with the wrong director, but the movie is so well put together that even the most skeptical will probably love it as a great comedy. Watching this made me appreciate it more. Both are considered comedies, but Postal isn't funny. And the worst thing to sit through is a comedy that isn't funny. I really hope this one stays at the bottom for the sake of my psyche.
I hate video games.
So the Hitman games are mainly based in stealth. The main character is a clone bred to be the perfect killer. Games sometimes have a story, but the main focus is to kill a target with multiple different ways of approaching it. It gives the players tons of options, with some paths taking an hour just to make the kill more satisfying. This presents a huge problem with any sort of adaptation. More so than any other game turned to movie so far, does this cause a huge disconnect from the source material. If you made a super accurate version of the games, these movies would have Hitman carefully planning out how to kill one guy, so in other words, it would be kind of boring. There are moments in this that represent this aspect of the game, but overall this is just an existing IP slapped onto a generic action movie. Not even a great one. The editing in this one is on a different level. Action is extremely hard to follow to a hilarious degree. The quick pacing of this movie doesn't help either. Things happen so quickly for a movie with not tons of plot. This film has a lot of competent elements about it, but it has a lot against it. Something that really bothered me about this film is the treatment of the female characters. There are not a lot, but when there are, they are either sex objects or torture victims, or both. It just made me very uncomfortable.
You don't want to fuck me, and you don't want to kill me. I've never felt so much indifference in my entire life.
And that's really all I have to say about this one.
Who was the client?
Answer me.
How did Uwe Boll get a budget this big? How was he allowed to do this? At no point should a movie executive say, let's see if Uwe Boll can do Lord of the Rings. So let's get this out of the way. Dungeon Siege, the game, is a very colorful open-world fantasy adventure game, but as always, Uwe Boll does not care.
Give me the chicken. Arr, arr, arr.
This movie's visual palette is a bore to look at. Everything is drab and gray. Even the mystical nature nymphs look completely lifeless. Nothing feels magical about this fantasy world. The film keeps the weirdest aspects of the games even if they don't fit. The player character in the game is called Farmer, so the movie just calls him Farmer despite it never sounding natural.
Well, I figure Farmer saw enough of me when he was growing up.
Farmer, you're not seriously considering this, are you?
Farmer didn't come.
Worst of all, no one really fits into the world. Every actor is horribly miscast. No one could even be bothered to wear a wig or grow out their hair. They all look so modern. Taking the prize for the worst performance is Wing Commander star Matthew Lillard, who legitimately looks like he is on drugs.
This is ridiculous. It's as if you were talking about armed dogs. Anyone else care to commit treason?
Is there anything nice to say? This is his most comprehensible movie. I mean, the bar is very low in this aspect, but at least with this one, there's a story, and it is mostly told in the proper order. Boll is so frustrating to watch because he verges so close to being so bad it's good, but his stuff is so draining. It is obvious he takes himself seriously and thinks he is making high quality stuff. On a technical level, this is his best movie, but it still sucks.
Gentlemen, Commander Tarish has poisoned the king and accuses me of treason. Ha!
His stuff is really draining to watch, so it's gonna be nice to take a little break from it. Damn it. I'm done with Uwe Boll. How did we get here? How did Uwe Boll make 2 video game movies in the same year? I understand he was exploiting some tax law to get funding, but who let him have these movie rights? The Far Cry games are simple. They are just Die Hard in an exotic location like an island. This is right up Boll's alley, and yet somehow he manages to throw in stuff that doesn't fit. It is an action movie on an island, but they are fighting evil super soldier mutants. I don't know. This is Uwe Boll at his most generic. A boring action movie with a tough guy lead with absolutely no charisma. All the jokes are so lame and feel like they should be in a different film. I tried to ride this Uwe Boll train, but he has constantly disappointed me. He has improved technically, but not as a storyteller. He retired a few years ago, and I now end my short-lived journey with his work. All 6 of Uwe Boll's movies will most likely be in the bottom 10.
I don't like him. I don't even know him. Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!
Cool, we are back to stuff with production value. So the Max Payne games are very gritty shooting games with a central mystery. It is known for popularizing bullet time sequences. They try to do it in the movie, but it feels wrong and it only happens a handful of times. Overall, this movie doesn't really seem to care about the game that much. The studio probably just wanted to make another Mark Wahlberg cop movie, so they grabbed the rights to this and just put it together. It is chock full of basic tough guy movie tropes, like women throwing themselves at the protagonist, but he's too angsty to have sex with them. That way, the director can objectify the woman and make it seem like his main character has strong morals. This film yearns to be dark and edgy, but is held back by its PG-13 rating, but its main weakness is that it's just another cop movie. There are choices to stylize it, but not enough to be considered consistent. There was one idea the filmmakers added, but again, it just feels odd. The main crime being investigated in this movie is the distribution of this drug called Valkyr, which makes you see demons. These things show up a lot, but they feel like something from Underworld, not a Mark Wahlberg cop movie. Overall, this film is pretty standard, but just not very special.
I'm out of ideas then. Hey, baby. Okay, what? Not now, bitch.
I'm gonna try my best with this one, but it is going to be hard to communicate how little of a shit anyone gave making this. There is not a single good thing about this movie. Every performance is terrible, especially Chris Klein.
Bison's bringing crime into the neighborhoods to drive the land value down and then is buying it back up wholesale. We gotta move on then.
Kristen Cruick gives him some stiff competition, who you know will be bad before she even appears on screen due to this terrible narration.
Sometimes I wonder how I got to be the way I am.
The director does not care about anything or how to present it, which you can tell since he casted Taboo of the Black Eyed Peas in his movie. The character he plays is Vega. Vega is like a handsome fighter who wears a mask so he doesn't distract his enemies. No character is like their game counterpart at all, honestly making me question if they just went off pictures from the game instead of doing research. This movie is just a big ball of nothing. It has no genre or tone. You get extremely silly scenes like Chun-Li doing her tornado kick, but then you have scenes of the villain forcibly removing a baby from a woman's stomach. This was really terrible and a deeply unpleasant experience.
And I love this job.
Tekken is a series of fighting games that I would call very weird, like anime weird. I mean, one of the main recurring fighters is a bear trained in martial arts. The makers of this movie elected to ignore the game's oddness in favor of making a movie that feels like a power fantasy Hunger Games fanfic.
After the terror wars, governments fell. Corporations took control, fighting over what remained.
All the main problems come from this guy, Jin, who is a terrible main character. He is a blank slate protagonist who's supposed to be really cool, but is just so uncharismatic. This guy sleeps with his girlfriend in the first 10 minutes of the movie, then spends the rest of the movie trying to sleep with this girl, which he suffers no sort of scrutiny for. I guess the women in the movie would need a personality to be angry about that, but luckily no one has one. Well, how are the fights? They are okay at best. Nothing really impressive, but there is this really weird trend with fights involving Jin. The fight would start, then Jin will start to lose, but he has a flashback about his dead mom.
Never underestimate your opponent. Watch, adapt. Every strike should be your best.
Jin will proceed to do one move, then win. It is an odd pattern, but this movie is filled with those. When there isn't fighting, it is just a boring revenge story, family drama centered around a fighting tournament. All the crazy ideas from the games are lost on a really generic mishmash of everything that came before, but hey, what do you expect from the director of Halloween 4, Anacondas, and Free Willy 2? It's not bottom of the barrel, but it's still pretty bad.
You know it's rude to stare.
Sorry, I was just admiring your toes.
A prince of Persia.
Let's get this out of the way. This movie is horribly whitewashed. Most of these actors are not Middle Eastern. Disney easily could have avoided this controversy with all the money it has. Hell, even meet halfway since Jake Gyllenhaal is adopted in the movie, so make him white and everybody else Middle Eastern. It is set up for that, but they instead just brown-face the white actors. Now with that addressed, how is the movie itself? It's like kind of unspecial, okay? Disney has been trying for years to find another swashbuckling franchise to be their new moneymaker, and Prince of Persia was one of these failed attempts. This reliance on this formula causes the movie to be so generic. The worst part is the main romance. It is one of those they bicker all the time equals chemistry scenarios.
What do you intend to do with her?
Yes, do tell him. Can't you see how concerned he is?
Most of the movie is focused on this, and it gets grating after a while. Other aspects like the action is fine, but is undercut by really out-of-date decisions like frame rate slow-mo. Lots of weird editing and sound in general.
The Lion of Persia! They're calling you the Lion of Persia.
I would maybe go a little bit more into the story, but the movie has one of those time travel, so it didn't really happen endings. The issue with this is the Prince of Persia really hasn't changed as a character, so the point is really moot. What did I like about the movie? Like I said, the action was decent, some impressive stunt work, and I wouldn't say any of the performances were bad. I think the movie would be better if it had more fun instead of just constant arguing. Not terrible, but not terribly interesting either.
Dastan, where's the dagger?
You're welcome to search me for it. You'll have to be very thorough.
It is really starting to dawn on me why video game movies get such a bad rep. The main issue with this stretch is that they feel so out of touch with the trends of the time. They are still copying what was working, but they are just copying things that was popular 5 years ago. The reason Silent Hill was so refreshing was that you could see the care and effort that was put into it. Was it great? No, but it was trying. The filmmakers on display here showed such a level of disinterest, I started to feel the same way. Maybe this was prominent in the older movies as well, but there was so much telling and not showing, going against one of the most basic rules of filmmaking. Directors need to care, no matter what their movie is based on. Most of the people working on these movies obviously did not care about the games, but just wanted to use a property to make a quick buck. I'm gonna take a break, but after this is the final stretch. So one came out in 2010 and the other one came out in 2012. I'm just going to talk about both of them at the same time because no other movies came out in between. The crazy thing is, despite this being a long series, it feels like each movie doesn't lead into the next. The first movie ends with Alice escaping the lab and venturing out into Raccoon City where the zombie virus is broken out. Her adventures in Raccoon City are the second movie, which ends with Alice and her crew escaping a lab again, revealing she has some sort of tracker in her head. Extinction opens, and she is not with her team anymore. The team is a part of some traveling convoy, and one of them is just gone, slotted out for a new character from the game. It gets worse from Afterlife on, where game characters are kind of just constantly shuffled around. Here are some examples. Resident Evil 1 and 3 protagonist Jill Valentine first shows up in Apocalypse as a main character, then is just gone for Extinction and Afterlife, but returns as a villain in Retribution. She is redeemed, but is just not in Final Chapter. Resident Evil 2 protagonist Claire Redfield is introduced in Extinction and is a main character in Afterlife. She is not in Retribution, but returns in Final Chapter. Resident Evil 1 and 5 character Chris Redfield is also introduced in Afterlife, and despite surviving that movie, he never makes an appearance again. Resident Evil 2 and 4 characters Ada Wong and arguably most iconic character in the franchise Leon Kennedy both appear in Retribution, and both do not come back for Final Chapter. Albert Wesker, the most iconic villain in the series, is introduced in Extinction and makes an appearance in the rest of the films, played by a different actor, and to varying degrees of screen time. He really only appears on screens for most of Retribution. Paul W. Sanderson didn't direct Apocalypse or Extinction, but returns for Afterlife and directs the rest from here on out. It seems like he doesn't really care about adapting the games, instead favoring set pieces he thinks are cool even if they don't make any sense. Retribution opens with a whole action sequence in reverse for no reason, made worse by the fact it is shown in its entirety again except in the correct order. Anderson just puts in game characters to appease fans, but honestly doesn't care what they do or how they are portrayed. The only character to follow is Alice, and we still don't get any concrete answers about her till the final film. These two movies had some enjoyable moments, but kind of blend together for me.
Hey boys, is that any way to treat a lady?
This is the most disappointing and cringy film so far. As stated before, the first Silent Hill wasn't perfect, but the effort at least made it one of my favorites. Even if you hate the first movie, I think watching this one will make you think it is a masterpiece, because holy shit, this sucks. completely undoes everything the first movie was doing. The unnerving and creepy atmosphere, replaced with cheap jump scares. The well-planned and vivid cinematography, replaced with cheap lighting. That really interesting, ambiguous ending, completely undone by a weird flashback. It is impressive how bad this movie is compared to the first one, which came out 6 years before. All the love and care is gone, now replaced by people that don't act like human beings.
What happened to the small talk? No, what's your favorite band? Do you Facebook? Nothing like that?
Fuck Facebook, do you?
I was cringing during certain scenes because I couldn't believe someone wrote this dialogue thinking it sounded good.
Come on, Heather. Share a little bit of yourself. Everyone has a story. Tell us yours.
The funniest aspect of this movie is that it was marketed as Silent Hill Revelation 3D. So there's a bunch of scenes that are supposed to be in 3D, so watching it in 2D is so strange it is funny. Despite these funny moments, the movie overall is so disappointing and forgettable that I can't really recommend it.
It is possible for a few to escape just for a while, but it requires sacrifice and suffering.
The Need for Speed games are just racing games. That's it. Some have stories, some don't. There's nothing to adapt here other than have fast cars racing. In that sense, Need for Speed the movie gets an A+. They even take it a step further by having really impressive stunts with no noticeable CGI. A cool aspect they took from the games was having this cut to POV as they are racing, and I gotta say it works really well. Most of the time when they race, there's no overbearing music, letting the sound design for the vehicles pull you into the racing. Those aspects are really great, it is just that it was all in favor of making a Fast and Furious ripoff. The Achilles heel of this movie is by far the script. The structure of this movie is really weird, with its focus bouncing from being a film about a car building crew, to a road trip, to a revenge film, to a race movie. And the dialogue is awful. Every joke is so bad and no one talks like a person. This movie has great actors like Aaron Paul, Dominic Cooper, Dakota Johnson, Imogen Poots, and Rami Malek, but it gives them nothing to work with no matter how hard they try. This feels like a movie where their agents were like, yeah, the script is garbage, but it could lead to bigger, better things. Then they work on this movie for a couple months trying to find character in a script that has none. Though this sounds like a huge mark against it, it at least feels worthy of a theatrical release, which is saying a lot. If you like cars, it is worth at least one watch. Easily one of the better movies. Yeah, this makes it official. I don't think Hitman can ever be a good movie. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with this one. The first Hitman was a generic action movie, but this movie is something else. The first had some grit and was passingly trying to be set in reality, while this one completely gave up. So the first half of this movie makes Agent 47 the supposed villain, with this lady being the main character, which is kind of interesting until they do a twist where he is actually good, because he can't have your iconic game character be beaten. There really is no approach to this material that can make it work. These are just such a lost cause. It is obvious they are not putting in a lot of effort from how bland this movie looks. The main flaw with the film is that it is really lame, but the music and directing try to make you think it is cool, even if what they are showing is really dumb. Even the most basic things like walking is underscored with this badass music. This movie feels so distant and sterile. It also has one of the worst endings so far, along with one of the worst post-credit scenes. Overall pretty bad, but also very forgettable, so it wasn't offensive in any way.
Move!
Warcraft is a very popular fantasy game and has had a movie adaptation in development for years. Director Duncan Jones is a giant fan of the games, so this was a dream project for him. He has a genuine love for the material and it shows. Jones worked incredibly hard to capture the look and mythology of the games to live action with tons of detail. He presents this complicated world with tons of lore as a complicated world with tons of lore. This movie throws a lot at you and doesn't really take ample time to explain anything or let you get used to the universe at all. This movie had so many characters and is split in two focuses, the humans and the invading orcs. It does not help that the half of the movie that focuses on the human characters is so bland. None have a strong personality with no moments to really make them likable. The main character has like a son who dies, but there is no feeling whatsoever because we know nothing about them. Some of the actors are trying, but some of them have to try acting with tusks in their mouths. Everything is so goofy, but there is nothing that embraces it. Shots like this are played with such seriousness. The orc half of the movie is better, with characters that actually have a lot of depth. It is one of the greatest strengths of the movie, but the sad fact is that these effects aren't aging the best. The orcs are all CGI, so it makes connecting with them harder. So the people that look like people are flat and boring, and the characters that have depth are models from a video game cutscene. The whole experience is just really unengaging. Something good about the movie? The action is pretty cool and visceral, just wished I cared about the people fighting more. Points for passion, but subtract for execution. There are tons of Assassin's Creed games, so I'm gonna do my very best to explain the basic premise. All are about this war between two religious groups, the Assassins and the Templars. Assassins are like parkouring people in hoods who try to stop Templars, people usually in power, from using ancient artifacts from controlling the world. Every game has you playing a character who is a descendant of an assassin, who has been put into a machine called the Animus, which, no joke, can access memories of your ancestors through your DNA. You play as said ancestor assassin and kill Templars with stealth and gadgets. Got it? Good, because the movie does a really horrible job at trying to explain this. This movie presents itself in the most tedious and confusing way possible. Scenes and explanations happen much later than they should. It's frustrating because something as simple as the purpose of a scene is lost behind its confusing construction, but the director displays no awareness that it is confusing. Small things like jokes do not track at all and just leave you scratching your head.
It's an open menu, but we do recommend the chicken.
What can I get you, Mr. Lynch? It's an open menu, but we do recommend the chicken.
I mean, I guess the games are convoluted, but it didn't need to be that faithful of an adaptation. The games are action-adventure stories. I have no idea what this is trying to be. You would think it would aim to be some action blockbuster, but it is shot like some experimental art house film with its low lighting. The way this movie looks is not an issue, but it clashes with what the film is trying to be. It makes it so serious when the games have the capacity to be a little fun, like having the assassins team up with historical figures, which they try here, but is just unintentionally hilarious.
It's Christopher Columbus.
In all its serious aura, it painfully lacks any subtlety with what it is trying to say. This movie probably has the best cast of actors out of any of these movies, but I kinda believe none of them read the script. They all look so bored. Most of this movie is talking in the modern day, so it just drags. When there is action, it is just the generic memory stuff, where there is no tension because we don't know anyone. There is some cool shots and impressive stunts, but it is ruined by this awful quick cutting. This should have been so much better. This one really gets me because I just don't understand how they screwed up this bad. So yeah, pretty bad.
What the fuck is going on?
Finally, the last one of these. There are 6 of these, and all I can really say is I can't believe these got theatrical releases. They are so ridiculous and poorly made that it is shocking that they made this many. Were people really captivated by this story? 6 movies following Alice and her amnesia, and the answer is so underwhelming. She is a clone of some Umbrella executive. That's it. It took 6 movies just to reveal that, and it did not matter or really change anything. Her victory over the villains meant nothing. They didn't even fully commit to this being the final chapter. It will be because they are developing a reboot, but they just still left it slightly open-ended. It doesn't feel like any sense of closure was achieved. I got the idea for this video by just casually rewatching these movies, with this one being the only one I had never seen before, having seen all the others at least once. These last 3 all felt the same with the same plot beats. As I said before, the games sometimes are just goofy action, but these movies go way too overboard with scale. They are more concerned with shoving as many zombies onto screen than creating a tense atmosphere. Now, having seen the whole series, I can now say it wasn't worth the time commitment. Of all the franchises, this one prospered. I really don't understand. There were some funny moments, but this one is down there for being so anticlimactic.
My name is Alice.
We got our first video game movie reboot, everyone. This was bound to happen eventually, and surprise, surprise, it doesn't suck. It is actually a fairly enjoyable movie. Like, one I would recommend for people if they wanted a digestible action movie. Is it spectacular? No, but it is competent, and that shoots this up above most of these movies covered so far. The film's greatest strength is Alicia Vikander as Lara Croft, who elevates the material greatly. She has such strong movie star charisma, I'm surprised she didn't get put in more things in the following years. I was also impressed with how tame this movie was. I'd like more representation of women in action movies, but Hollywood has this tendency to half-ass it, while also patting themselves on the back with dialogue constantly emphasizing, wow, we got a strong woman in the lead, isn't that incredible?
And a lady should be modest.
Yes, a lady should be modest.
Here, Laura's just strong. The other characters don't constantly point out she is a woman or talk down her ability. She just is really good, and I think mainstream films need to take notes on this approach. We get a chance to just like this character, instead of the movie insisting we like this character. This movie is based on the 2013 reboot of the game series, so this is more of a Lara Croft origin story, and in terms of that, it is pretty good. The story isn't amazing, but it does enough to keep you engaged. Main strikes against this movie is that there's some horrid green screen and some not great CGI. Kills some tension and really well thought out set pieces. I am interested if the sequel can improve on this foundation, in spite of this terrible tacked on fan service ending.
I'll take 2.
Other than that, an actual good movie. I'll be honest, I have very little thoughts about this movie. Not to sound weird, but this movie's made for normies. It feels so calculated and ripped off from blockbusters of the 2010s, from the jokes to the action. The games are arcade games where you play giant mutated animals and they destroy shit. So this movie got that down. The issue is that it is a silly game, but the movie shoots everything in this flat angle that makes it seem like it is playing it straight. Some actors seem like they understand how dumb this movie is, but it is framed so badly that none of that self-awareness comes through. The music also blows.
Poacher's killed his entire family. He's in your troop now.
It tries to add so much emotion when there is none, and it sounds so generic. And I can't emphasize enough how bad the humor is. This was not a fun sit, and one I started forgetting about immediately after I watched it.
No, come on, dude. Have some class, okay?
Okay, seriously, what is this? Why does this exist? How was this released in theaters? This is our first app game because I'm not doing the other one. The game is just running around and you shoot zombies. This movie has shooting zombies, so that's something. This might be the laziest film I have ever seen. The sets are the most laughable, because things like military bases are just like plain rooms with pictures of guns taped to walls. Training grounds are just producers' backyards. Science facilities look like construction sites. This film is so impressively lazy in about every aspect. They would get something to the bare minimum and producers would be like, ah, good enough. This movie has the same quality as stuff starring TikTok people, except it has people who look like influencers and Dolph Lundgren. Nothing in this movie makes sense. They established there was a zombie apocalypse, but like, everything is fine. The whole crux of the plot is the government recruits gamers to fight zombies by grabbing the top players from a zombie game. So people are just like comfortably living lives while zombies are just running around. There was also this weird pattern where a bunch of zombies would appear out of nowhere with no one seeing them before they show up.
These beasts have nothing against a natural-born soldier.
Get behind me!
The cherry on top of this is that the film actually had the guts to pull a "it was all just a video game" twist ending. This movie stunk, no one cared about it, so in turn, I don't either.
Be direct. You aggressive? We'll be dead.
Remember an hour ago when I said the Mario movie halted Nintendo from allowing more films? Well, here's their second shot. This movie did extremely well. Pokemon is a huge franchise, one that I loved as a kid. You would train your Pokemon to battle others, and it was just so much fun. I loved the TV show, which captured the feeling of the game so well. Which brings up the really interesting decision to adapt a spin-off game about a talking Pikachu who solves crimes.
I'm a great detective. Detective Pikachu.
Like, how was this pushed forward instead of just like a normal Pokemon movie? So I'm gonna cut to the chase. I don't think this is good at all. Let's start with the thing that bothers me the most. The Pokemon design. Not even just from a design perspective, but how they are blended into the real environments are so poor. They never feel like they are there. There are shots in this that look like a fan film. Design-wise, Pikachu sometimes looks cute, but other ones, especially ones without fur, are gross. Pokemon are given a smooth look to be cute. When you give them roughed, cracked, leathery skin, it makes them a lot less pleasant to look at. The rest of the execution of the movie doesn't elevate anything either. I do enjoy the attempt to give this movie the look of a detective film with the bright neon and dark shadows, but it is completely undermined by its terrible script.
I work for the CNN blog making Pokemon listicles all day, okay? Top 10 cutest Pokemon.
Yeah, my grandma loves those.
Yeah, newsflash, they're all cute.
The dialogue and the characters are so badly put together, but the thing that really grated on me about this movie was the humor. All the jokes are so bad, made worse as it is scored by shitty comedy music.
Throw the ball.
Like a man!
The humor gets so much worse when Ryan Reynolds' Pikachu is introduced. Ryan Reynolds is known for being quippy and just talking a lot. Sometimes it works, and a lot of the time it doesn't. Pikachu never shuts up in this. It is just joke after joke, like he needs to reach a certain quota in every scene. Some shocked me for how inappropriate they were for a kid's PG film.
I just invited someone to my apartment. I never do this. I'm not that kind of Pokemon.
This movie has nothing to cling on to. Nothing to say and really nothing of note to truly talk about. Just another bland piece of garbage to throw in the trash.
Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all. It's you and me.
Finally, the last one. Holy shit. So, Sonic is just kind of a meme franchise at this point. It is impressive that it has lasted this long despite making some of the worst games of all time. People just really like this character, so the movie tries to capitalize on that, and it worked because this movie was very successful. It is the second highest grossing film of 2020, which is such an achievement. It did really well for something that got so much backlash over the original trailer. I appreciate them wanting to please fans, but it doesn't change what the movie is at its core, which is just another disposable kids movie. There's very little that makes this movie stand out in comparison to things like Alvin and the Chipmunks, Yogi Bear, or Woody Woodpecker. It is a movie that is really meant for kids because there is very little for adults to enjoy. It has the same problem as Pikachu where it feels the need to have tons of jokes, except the difference here is that I laughed at least twice. This movie is harmless. It's just unremarkable because it sticks to a very basic formula of character wants friends, bonds with a friend, they're friends. Jim Carrey annoyed me most of the time, but whatever, I'm done. I get why kids love this, but doesn't mean I have to.
I was spitting out formulas while you were still spitting up formula.
I was breastfed, actually.
Nice. Rub that in my orphan face.
Alright, time to reveal the official ranking, starting from the bottom. First, an honorable mention. Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I couldn't do it. This movie blows me away every single time I watch it. It's terrible and perfect at the same time. Please, please, please watch this movie. Number 37, Postal. Awful offensive piece of shit that almost made me give up on the concept of cinema. Number 36, Resident Evil Extinction. Such a worthless film that does everything wrong and can't even be entertaining about it. Number 35, Alone in the Dark. Boring, barely remember anything about it. 34, Far Cry. Probably Boll's most competent movie, which also makes it his most uninteresting. Number 33, Dead Trigger. So lazy with no passion behind it. Number 32, BloodRayne. So weird and cheap. Number 31, In the Name of the King. Boll's best movie, but not his best movie. Number 30, Legend of Chun-Li. Waste of space, one of the most nothing films I've ever seen. Number 29, House of the Dead. Bad, but the shootout scene makes this movie, so definitely my favorite Boll movie. The only one of his films I would consider watching again. Number 28, Double Dragon. Eat fist, buttheads. Number 27, Silent Hill Revelation 3D. Bursts of hilarity, but mostly disappointing. Number 26, Agent 47. Who? Number 25, Resident Evil. Extremely overrated. People who remember liking it will probably fall asleep on rewatch. Number 24, Tekken. Needed to find an identity of its own. Number 23, Assassin's Creed. Was supposed to be our shining golden boy. Instead, I couldn't see anything. Number 22, Detective Pikachu. Why does Psyduck sound like he's dying? Number 21, Rampage. Stop taking your dumb movies seriously, just be dumb. Number 20, Wing Commander. Here's a quote from star Freddie Prinze Jr. I can't stand Wing Commander. I can't watch one scene of the movie. I read the script and loved it. So did my buddy, Matthew Lillard. We both got the parts, we went on location, and they said, here's the new script. It was a piece of shit. Number 19, Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life. Lara Croft punching a shark is still great. Next. Number 18, Resident Evil The Final Chapter. All the game characters are gone, but we got Ruby Rose, I guess. Number 17, Sonic the Hedgehog. Liked it more than I thought I would, but the bar was so low that it's not a compliment. Number 16, Doom. The Rock shit-talked this movie a lot during promotion for Rampage, but at least this movie knows what it is, even if it is a ripoff of better movies. Number 15, Hitman. Kind of hilarious, kind of boring. Number 14, Max Payne. It's a Mark Wahlberg cop movie. At this point, that sentence is enough to tell if you are in or out. Number 13 and number 12, Resident Evil Afterlife and Resident Evil Retribution. Enough fun schlock to keep me engaged. Still bad, though. Number 11, Prince of Persia. This movie is a big contender to get taken off of a streaming service due to rampant brownface. Number 10, Warcraft. You should not need to buy a strategy guide to watch your movie. Number 9, Resident Evil Apocalypse. Fun trash. Number 8, Dead or Alive. Even better fun trash. Number 7, Need for Speed. More like need for a better script.
Oh!
Number 6, Super Mario Bros. This movie is average. Most people who say this movie is the worst probably have not watched it themselves. Number 5, Lara Croft Tomb Raider. Fun and does everything it is trying to do. Number 4, Mortal Kombat. Probably the best adaptation on the whole list. Number 3, Street Fighter. Biased pick, but Guile is in it, so it is justified. Number 2, Tomb Raider. A movie. Nothing really trashy about it. Would recommend. Number 1, Silent Hill. Attempted to do new things and is made with tons of passion. This movie isn't great, but it tried, which is more than I can say about 80% of this list. So, what did I learn after watching all of these? Making movies is hard. Video game movies get a bad rep. People act like they are unsalvageable garbage piles, but there are highlights. We need to give it time. If we get someone really talented to tackle an adaptation, I think we will one day get a great video game movie. Plus, we have tons coming up, like Monster Hunter reteaming Paul W.S. Anderson and Mila Djokovic. A new Mortal Kombat, which is some guy's directorial debut. Tomb Raider 2, well, that's something. Uncharted, directed by the guy who made Venom. Minecraft the movie. Borderlands, another Resident Evil, sequels to Sonic and Detective Pikachu. Just Dance. What the fuck?